I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how I got here because I'm spending a lot of time with startups right now, but it didn't start out that way for me. I kind of came the other way. I got my start in high tech working as a recruiter. Staffing is my background. I started at a company that made disk drives. It was called Seagate Technology. It was a very large company. It was about 60,000 people when I worked there with a very large global workforce. I left Seagate and I went to a much smaller company that was an up-and-coming, really hot Silicon Valley company. It was called Sun Microsystems. And when I was at Sun, I ran diversity programs there, and that was mostly because Sun was in all kinds of trouble for affirmative action. But the cool thing was I got to report to Scott McNeely and his direct staff once a quarter, and his direct staff was Carol Bartz and Eric Schmidt and Ed Zander and a bunch of really neat people that you might have heard of. And then after I left Sun, I decided to go even smaller. I went to a small software company called Borland. They made Windows applications, and it was even teenier. It was about 10,000 people globally. And then when I left Borland, on a whim, I took a call from one of my Borland execs had gone to this teeny little software tools company, and he went there because he liked the CEO. And I was having one of those bad hair days, like I woke up and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I called him about something, and he said, you can call my CEO. His name is Reed Hastings. So I did. I just picked up the phone and said, you don't know me, but you should. And talked myself into taking a job running HR for that company, which was about 100 employees. We grew through merger and acquisition over the 5 years we were together, and every time we acquired a company, we doubled. So we were 100, we were 200, we were 400, we were 800, we were 1,600. And we grew that company by telling all the corporate lies that all of you who have been in larger companies have heard. 1 and 1 will equal 3. There'll be synergy. Our sales forces will coalesce into an aligned unit of happiness. Yeah, how well did that work, right? So eventually, our largest competitor bought us, and they did exactly what we did whenever we acquired a company. They got rid of all the management, and Reed made a giant pile of money, and he invested in a bunch of dot-com startups, and I did exactly what I'm doing now. I sent out an email and said I'm a consultant. And I was consulting when he called me up in the middle of the night. True story. 2 in the morning. Are you sleeping? I'm like, yeah, geek, I'm normal. I'm going to go run Netflix. I'm like, okay, okay. That's the DVD and the mail idea you had? He goes, yeah. I'm like, that's a stupid idea. Rock on with that. And he said, I'd like you to come too. And I said, no, because I was having a pretty good time. And I said, why would I do this? And he said, let's make the kind of company that we always dreamed of. And that was pretty compelling at 2 in the morning, and he kept talking, so I did it. Shock of shocks, I did not write the Netflix culture deck. How many people have read it? Well, good. If you haven't, you should go back and do it. And let me tell you a little bit about how it came about. Similar to Tim's story early on, we had a very hard time at Netflix in the early days before we went public. We ran out of money a number of times. And at one point, we also had to lay off a third of the company. And when we came back, in our same story in 2001, 2 things happened. One was DVD players dropped to $99, and everybody got one under the tree. And second was, it was right after September 11th, and everybody stayed home or in the Bay Area was out of work. And what they did instead was watch movies. So our business grew a great deal. And what happened was our company became a really fun, exciting, hard, great place to work because we had twice as much work to do and only a third as many people. And I decided that, we both decided that it was time to write it down. But I did another thing. And so if you've read the Netflix deck, the other thing about my slides, I've changed them up. I mean, I don't even know if I'm going to talk to them because you guys have so inspired me with the other talks today. So I may just talk about the other stuff. So if you've read the Netflix slide deck, it's a very nice thing that inspires a lot of people. But I don't want to talk today about aspirations or inspirations. I want to talk about what you actually do. So today I'm going to go over a couple of fundamental lessons for you, and these actually are not anything different than you've already heard about already. I'm just going to give you my version of them. So the first one is to start with fundamentals. We're going to talk a little bit about creating great teams, and if we have time, we'll talk about pattern recognition. I love you guys. You know, part of the reason I said yes to this conference was it's been 9 months since I've been around engineers every day, and, I really miss you. And, and here's why I miss you. Because you're so logical. Things are good or they're bad, right? They're right or they're wrong. They're true, they're false. They're 0, they're 1, they're black or white. I love it. The only 50 shades of gray for an engineer are something they saw their spouse read, right? I mean, it's so clean. It's so important to me to be around you that I took a vow to become a geek. Okay? So the story was, after having told all those lies at all those companies, and the other thing was I never was a very good HR person. Like, I was always in trouble. Like, people would say, you yelled at an engineer and made them unhappy. I'm like, he was being a twit. And so I'd get in trouble. But when I took the vow of geekdom, what I decided to do was I decided to dedicate the rest of my life paying attention to the things that I had been taught how to do as a business person and particularly as an HR person, and decide whether or not any of that shit made any sense whatsoever. Okay. Here's what I learned. I am not an HR person. I haven't been one for a very long time. There's probably no company that would really hire me for an HR job because I'm not that qualified. Bain called me up to see if I wanted to run their human capital practices division for some part of the country, and I was like, maybe, but I don't know what that is. Do you practice human capital? I don't know. I just didn't understand it. So these are the things I have learned, the things that are absolutely true. I met a guy last week, a guy named Mike McHugh. He's CEO of a little company named Flipboard. It's Mike's third startup. And he said, the first one I was just kind of messing around. The second one, all I said was, it's about the people, people first. And he said, you know what? It's about the product, goddammit. And everybody's talked a little bit about that balance that says, culture's about people and how do you balance happiness. And, the truth is, if you don't have a successful company, you don't actually need a culture. Okay, that one's self-explanatory. Judgment trumps everything. I've spent a long, long time thinking about this, okay? The smartest person in the room with no judgment is not that smart. Judgment trumps speed. Judgment trumps intuition, right? And judgment is what you use as a leader, and all you guys are in the room, I think, because you're leaders or aspiring leaders, in every call that you make and everything that you do. And Scott, you talked about empowering people or having people figure out their own work. Ooh, I'll have to talk about empowerment too. It's that if they make the right calls, they'll do the right thing. And so judgment is a skill that's learned over time, and we never get any better at it. I mean, we never finish getting better at it. I'm going to do a sidetrack for a second and talk about empowerment. There's a couple of words that I really hate. One of them is empowerment. Okay? This is why I hate the word empowerment. Poof! You're empowered. And what I loved about Kate's talk was she didn't talk about empowerment, she talked about power. Because you have it. And everybody that works for you has it. All you have to do is realize it and exercise it, right? And nobody's going to go around empowering anybody else. You can set up a situation so that they can use their power wisely, but the truth is you don't give this to people. It's innate. Another word I hate, you'll hear this in my talk, consistency. My daughter's a baker, and when she bakes a cake, it's really important that the cake batter is consistent. It's not important in your company. Fairness is. Right? But doing things the same for the sake of consistency will only get you the same thing, the same way over again. And most companies spend an awful lot of time managing exceptions. The third one is, I'm going to talk to you about an exercise that I do with team leaders that can lead you to the idea that you can actually tell the truth to employees about how they're doing and what's going on. I know it's a wild concept, but you can do it. You can really tell the truth. Okay, so walk with me. I do this with one person, I do this with 10 people, and now I'm doing it with all 100 of you, okay? So your job as a leader in your company is to create amazing teams that do fabulous stuff that drive the company forward. It's really kind of that simple. And in order to do that, if you can think about what success looks like, you have a better opportunity to actually achieve it. So, imagine in 6 months if everything on your team was amazing. And you had the perfect team in place. Every single person was golden. What would be occurring then that's not occurring now? Okay? Then you want to make a couple of lists. How would you measure it? Right? 6 months from now, if you're on a technical team, then the metrics are pretty straightforward. You're going to be shipping something. You're going to be delivering something. You're going to be reporting out to something. You're going to be aligning with other teams. You'll know what your deadlines are. You'll know what your due dates. I used to tell people, at Netflix we didn't do performance reviews. Horrors. And they would say, well, how do you know people are performing? I'm like, well, so God gave engineers this amazing tool. It's called a Gantt chart. And in that chart, you can sort of see who needs to deliver what by when. And so you can kind of follow along. And if you're on a team that needs to deliver, you probably already know that. So you already know if you look 6 months out. And I don't say for you that are at bigger companies where you do 1 year planning or 5 year planning, or even if you're a smaller company and it's only 6 days out, because I've been there too. But try to imagine 6 months, okay? How are you going to measure it? What's going to be occurring differently than is occurring now? Not what do you currently measure, what's going to be different. And then, because I came from a company where we did movies, I would say, now make me a movie of it, okay? Watch the people doing those things that are not occurring now. And you guys talked about it, a couple of the speakers talked about it earlier, right? You may be able to be at home and work heads down on something that takes a lot of concentration, and in that kind of situation, a social skill isn't particularly important. But if you're going to go to a hackathon and your idea is going to be the next product idea, you might have to have some persuasion skills. You might actually have to be able to debate. You might have to be, quick on your feet, right? So you want to think, you might be great at the analysis. You might be somebody who has to influence. So what's occurring then that's not occurring now? How do you measure it? And what does it look like? I'm walking through, I'm seeing the people, they're having a meeting, right? Everybody gets together. What does that look like? Then you say to yourself, in order to have those things occur, what would people need to know how to do? Okay? They might want to have had some experience public speaking if that's an important part of the job, right? And then, well, okay, now that I know what I'm going to do, and now that I know how I'm going to measure it, and now that I know what it's going to look like, and now that I know what you need to be able to do, what kind of skills and experience might lead you there? Okay? And then, and only then, who do you got? Okay? Because this one doesn't. You all know this, right? This is the same thing you do with a product. Somebody said it earlier. They wrote down, the press release. Amazon wrote down the press release. To build the right team, first you need to know what you're going to build. Okay? Second of all, if you start with the team that you have, you're limited by what you know or you believe that they can do. And both of them matter. It's not just what you know they can do, it's partly what you believe they can do. So this is a classic begin with the end in mind conversation, but I wanted to walk you through it because it actually works with real teams and real people. Because, let's say, I'll give you, one of my Netflix colleagues is speaking here at Velocity. He's talking about Netflix's cloud solutions stuff. And Jeremy came to us from another company because when we realized that we were going to be streaming a third of the internet traffic in America, we realized that building that in our little bitty data center that ran the DVD by mail business was probably not going to happen, right? So we had this problem of enormous scale and complexity that needed to be solved right then. Yeah, pretty much, right? And we looked around at our wonderful data center team, bunch of great guys, and they were all terrific guys who had zero experience with very high-level, complex video streaming cloud technology, right? So, and it wasn't like they didn't want to. They're just the wrong guys, right? It was clear that they were the wrong guys. Many of them are still there running the data center for the DVD technology. Actually, almost all of them are gone because that's all kind of done, right? So, but we could sit down with that team and go, hey, look, here's what it's going to look like in 6 months. And I don't think you guys are the right team to do it, right? And they could be disappointed, but they weren't lied to, right? We didn't say, you know, we're going to work together and get you there by Thursday. Because Thursday wasn't going to happen, right? So if you follow my process, when you go back home and you look at your team, then you now have permission to tell the truth. And furthermore, people can be motivated for the end game, right? So now you've said, this is what we're going to accomplish. This is how we're going to measure ourselves. This is what it's going to look like when we do it well. This is what it's going to take to know how to do it, and this is what you know how to do, right? So that person can go, I don't want to do that. I mean, some people just don't, they like what they're doing and they don't want to do it. They want to, do the same thing, or they want to do it differently at another place. They want to stay on the trajectory they're at. They can be motivated. They know what they can do. People can own their own careers. Scott, the factory thing, rock on, man. I mean, paternalistic management determines your career is insane. You own your career. That's what I tell people. When they come to me, I love when my favorite conversation is not a happy one. My favorite conversation is the whiner. I don't know, things are really different than they used to be, and I used to know everybody in the company. And the culture's changing, and management doesn't seem to realize it. And I would say to them, well, since I am management, I'm pretty aware of this. Yeah, do you realize how much things have changed? Absolutely. Do you know why things are changing? Why, Patty, why? Because we're successful. And you know what we'd like to be someday when we grow up? A big, successful corporation that makes a lot of money and has a lot of customers who are really happy all over the world. How about that, right? And you can't go backwards, right? We're in technology. You get bigger, you get smaller, you get eaten. There's really only 3 possible outcomes. So, but you can decide to do that. If you want to stay in a small startup, then stay in a small startup. That's, rock on, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting a very long career in a very large corporation. But that's not up to the corporation. That's up to the individual to figure out. And you can opt in or opt out. Because, imagine this. If you followed my formula and you were able to tell the truth, then you could not have PIPs, which I think is the most utterly insane waste of time in businesses that we do. Okay? I've said this I'm only invited to speak at HR meetings like once. Yeah, this is like if these ladies could, and they're typically ladies, unless they're VPs and they're guys, had tomatoes, I would be tomatoed. Okay, let's walk through. I did this with Eric at lunch. Let me walk through a performance improvement plan. I'm going to use Kate. I hired Kate 5 years ago, and She was iffy. You know, but I liked her. Look how adorable she is, right? And she's so friendly and helpful, and she wasn't really qualified, but I kind of thought that she might be. Let's say I didn't hire her. Let's say Scott did. And about 6 months in, Scott comes in and he starts complaining to me that, you know, Kate's not that good and she really isn't able to do anything. And I'm like, well, didn't we kind of know that when we interviewed her, but you wanted to take a chance, and you've been taking a chance for 6 months now. And now she's 6 months behind the year she was behind when we hired her. Okay, things are looking good. I'm going to work with her. I'm going to coach her. I'm like, well, what coach her? She's adorable, right? Coach her on what? Well, she needs to have more technical skills. I'm like, but she doesn't have them. She doesn't know how, right? Are you going to teach her how to have 5 years of experience in the next 6 months? Yes. Okay. Now, Kate thinks she's doing absolutely wonderfully because he hasn't actually coached her on any of the bad stuff. He's only told her that she's really fun and she's really nice and everybody really likes her. And golly gee, if she could only work a little harder and a little faster, that would be nice. And then one day, a year later, he comes in and he says to me, God damn it, you know, I've had it with her. She can't produce. I'm putting her on a PIP. I'm like, oh, a performance improvement. That's right, Patty. I'm here to talk to you about when my last company, when I came, because you know I have to do this. And I say, why do you have to do that? Well, my HR person at name company said that I had to. Why do you think they said that you had to? Because it's against the law if you don't. I'm like, yeah, well, that's bullshit. Why do you think? Well, maybe she didn't say that. Or would she say, well, if I don't do it, I'll get sued? Okay? This is where sort of like, this is like, they may not have kittens, but they still believe in suing people, right? Okay, so I said, why do you think people sue companies? Why do you guys think people sue companies? Because what? They got lied. They're pissed, right? So now he's going to sit down with her. He's going to put her on a 90-day performance improvement plan. But actually, it's not a performance improvement plan. It's actually a way to get her out of the company because she's actually not that good for her. So for the next 90 days, every Thursday morning, they're going to have a meeting where in writing, he's going to prove she's incompetent. That's a fun meeting. Anybody ever had one of those? Yeah, you look forward to those, right? Wednesday night was always fun when you knew you were going to have those on Thursday morning. Oh, by the way, you're going to do that every week for 3 months. And by week 4, she cries at 11 o'clock every Thursday morning. In fact, you're crying too because you know you're going to talk to her. And by the way, here's the other thing. Everybody else knows. Right? When they come out of that meeting and she's like, I got to go. You know, it's just, ugh. Why would you do that? You know, and then when I see her, you know, at the end of the 3 months, she's like, the fucker, he never said a thing to me. He never said a thing to me, right? And I worked hard every minute I was here. So if the reason you're doing performance improvement plans is to be kind and fair, I don't believe they're particularly kind and fair. And I think that the conversation could have happened where Scott could have sat with Kate and said, I am building this new team. Let me tell you about what it's going to look like. Let me tell you how we're going to measure each other. Let me tell you what kind of experience, the kind of people that need to be on the team. And I own this team. I run it, right? And you're not my guy. You know, you're not the right person to be on here. And I'm not going to set you up to fail because that's not fair. Thank you for everything you've contributed. Let's figure out a way to part ways. And instead of spending the next 3 months doing that, how about if we just write you a nice check? And that's how I believe performance improvement plans should work, and that you should figure out, you should know enough about what you're doing and what matters to the business so you can make your own choices. I like it. Okay, where interviewing isn't a sin. We talked about this a little bit earlier. How do you know what you're worth in the competitive marketplace? Interviewing helps, right? Oh, when I worked at Sun, I was on this committee. When I worked at Sun, there were 360 HR people. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, 100 of them were dumber than rocks. And 100 of them were brilliant people, and it was so hard to kind of figure out who was what. It was a global company. There were a lot of people. But they always did initiatives. We always had initiatives. We had T-shirts for everything. But I was on this committee that was going to talk about improving our internal employee referral program. You know, it was how were we going to redo the process for employees who wanted to apply for other jobs in the company? And I remember this is, 10,000 people, so there were a lot of jobs. And Sun was growing, and Sun didn't acquire other companies. Sun hired, right? And I said, well, how about if, you could just recruit other people from other teams? You mean pilfer? I'm like, well, how come a headhunter can call, but an employee can't call inside their own company? Well, then we would disturb the teams that exist today. I'm like, isn't that what hiring people does? I was told to go to my room. But at Netflix, whenever people were unhappy, and this is advice another practical piece of advice I can give you, if you're talking to an employee who seems to be kind of disgruntled and unhappy about what they're doing, a really good thing to suggest that they do is go interview. Really, because they'll find out, what they're worth. The other thing is they'll tell a perfect stranger what they love to do, which is sometimes easier to do than to tell your own boss. And the other thing is when they do that and they come back and go, whew, the grass is not always greener on the other side and I love where I am and I want to stay, then you can say, by the way, what did they offer you? Because that's what market comp is. Market-based compensation is what you can get at another company. Right? And if every other company is paying more than your company, then you shouldn't be that surprised that you're not getting the great folks when you lowball them. Right? And everybody will come for more money. So there needs to be a balance. And so paying more, I believe in market-based comp. I think it's just like real estate, right? Sometimes it's location, sometimes it's where you've worked. There's a lot of things that go into compensation. But if you just think about it in that way rather than performance and merit-based, market-based does matter. Somebody else said that today. And in this world, you can be honest with people. And the reason I chose to teach you guys this lesson is because remember how I started and I said why I heart you? Because you're pretty honest people anyway. Engineering is a pretty straightforward occupation, right? And when you're in a code review, let's do that, right? And you're having a knockdown, drag-out fight. You're not arguing about who's the best engineer. You're arguing about whether it worked or not. And nobody gets all wigged out about that, right? I mean, I've seen engineers walk out of code reviews going, damn, that was, kick my ass, right? You love that stuff. So there's no reason you can't give each other feedback about your performance in an honest way. And people get to do their best work. Another phrase I have, another Pattyism. This is my algorithm for success. It uses words. Is what you love to do, that you're extraordinarily good at doing, something we need someone to be great at? And if any part of that equation breaks, then somebody's not happy. And if I need you to be really great at something and you're okay, you'll do it because, somebody needs to, and I ask you to, and I really wanted you to, you're not that happy because it's not the work that you love to do. And if you love to do something and I don't care, then you're going to continuously be frustrated. I mean, that often happens where people go, they don't realize my potential. They don't realize that I stay up all night working on something we don't care about, right? We don't realize it. We don't care, right? So you need to, in order to solve my equation, is what you love to do, that you're extraordinarily good at doing, something we need someone to be great at, the question to ask is, on that day, that fateful day, you got in your car at the end of the day, and you said, or the subway, or however you transport yourself to and from work, or whether it's from the kitchen or not, you go, damn, I'm good. Whatever that was, that's what you love to do, that you're extraordinarily good at doing. That's a really good interview question, by the way. Tell me about the day that you got in your car at the end of the day and you went, damn, I'm good. right? That's not like, tell me about your greatest accomplishment at work. You want the emotion, because when people are proud, you feel it, right? Pride manifests itself in people, which leads me to pattern recognition. So we had a CFO at Netflix for a very long time who was a New York investment banker, and so for all of you New Yorkers, he was a classic. He was a rough, tough guy. And he would always say to me, how do you live with yourself, Patty? You always say goodbye to people. Don't you feel like, you're just the evil guy with... I'm like, no, I have good conversations. It's just fine. But he was a guy who had, like, no EQ. He had no sense of people at all. And I have a reputation for having pretty good way to call people. And he's like, you have a gift. You have this magic gift that I don't have because I'm in finance. You can sense it. You can smell people. I'm like, to be honest with you, it's not like that at all. It's just pattern recognition. I just pay attention to people just like you pay attention to numerals. You can look at a 300-cell spreadsheet and go, look at that. I look at it and like, shaped like a fish. Many sevens. I don't know. Okay. I learned pattern recognition from these two cute people right there. That's my mom. But these are my fraternal twin daughters, Franny and Rose. Franny and Rose are fraternal twins. They're two eggs at the same time. They call each other womb mates. Most people don't know they're sisters, much less twins. Franny on the right wants to be a scientist. She's studying deep water jellyfish. She's studying the bioluminescence in their stinging cells. Rosie went to culinary school. She's a baker. She has my favorite job title in the world. Her job title is Pie Queen. They were different in the womb. They are completely different humans, motivated by completely different things. Honest to God, I used to think of problems at work and think, who would I hire? The brilliant lazy mofo? Or the unbelievable, stick to her knitting until she gets stuff done things. So the reason I bring up my beautiful twins, and if you ever meet them, don't ever tell them I showed you pictures. They'll freak out. Is because they're wired differently. They're different humans. They're motivated differently. They work differently. They're rewarded differently. They have different work. My baker daughter, she's at work at 4 o'clock in the morning every day. 4 in the morning. The other one, oh, God forbid. Although maybe if she's in a dive suit, it'll work out. So here's a couple of things for you to observe. You want to pay attention to how people respond to change. Who was saying about when you moved your chairs, right? You moved the chair 3 feet and everybody freaked out, right? It's classic geek, right? So sometimes I just move their chairs just to fuck with them. They're like, what happened? I'm like, I moved your chair. You can't do that. I did it. Moved your chair. You kind of have to train them on this stuff. It's funny. It's like they can switch code bases or technologies in a nanosecond, but move the chair. To challenge, right? How do people respond to doing new stuff? To the unknown. A lot of people, particularly engineers, I think, come in so many different flavors, but one of them is a lot of people love iteration and a little better and a little better and a little better and a little better and a little better. And some people are like, nobody's ever done it. That's the one I want. And they're just two really different problem sets. I remember one time, the first time an engineer told me, it's like, I visualized the data cube. I'm like, you get to work here. To each other, some people are solo creatures. They operate better on their own than they do with other team members. And to unexpected interruption. That's different than the unknown. This is the, oh my God, we're changing everything. And to learning, right? Back to the person we talked about, the jerk, the person you did, Kate, the person who knows everything. No one knows everything. That's just not true. So, you want to respond to see how people do that. And if you just go back and pay attention to them, and so in case you don't know these really obvious things, I'll tell you anyway. Like I've had conversations with engineers where I'm going, when he's crying, it's a sign of not happy. Yeah, right. You know, the dent in his car because he rammed it into the parking lot. Yeah, that's not good either, right? But body language matters a lot. These are also really good observations to think about when you interview people. So at Netflix for years, I interviewed every final candidate in the company. And all technical candidates. I couldn't do it anymore because it didn't scale, and I created a series of disciples that did it for me. But, you know, they would go like this. So all the guys would gather around me at the end of the day. So, what'd you think? Like, pretty smart guy. Whoa, yeah. Did he talk to you about what he built at, X company? Like, yeah. Like, oh my God, we just love him. I'm like, did he talk to you about his last boss? Oh, that guy was a total asshole. I'm like, I know. Did I tell you about the one before that? Yeah, talk about a dick, right? Did I tell you about the one before that? Yeah, I'm like, you know who's about to be the next asshole manager? Just saying. Some people come into work feeling like the company's going to screw them. It's like, and I don't know where you get it from, TV, from your parents, I don't know, but there are people who have different attitudes about work, and so you want to find out these things about their past other than what they did, right? Which loops back to my making a movie of it. When you make a movie of it, you're going to see how people respond to some of these situations, and you're going to have to think about in 6 months out if you want to do something differently, how's that going to play out? I wanted to end with a carry-on slide, and the only one I could find was the one that says keep calm and carry on, and I just thought this was the most inappropriate, stupidest carry on. It's from a movie in the 50s, so carry on, cowboys. Questions? I silenced you? Really? The question is, what do I think of Google's interview process? It's changed pretty significantly. They found through a lot of their data and analysis that it wasn't necessarily netting them the right people. I believe that you should interview for what you want back to when I went through the slides, right? What do you want them to do and accomplish? And if you want them to be able to be amazingly good at solving a very complex technical problem on the whiteboard under stress, and that's what they're going to do every day, then that's a perfectly reasonable interview technique. It bears almost no resemblance to the work that people actually do when they come to work. So, I'm a big fan of technical questions and tests. For a technical position, you need to know what you know. And by the way, if you hire somebody who's not technically competent, the person at fault is not the person who got hired, it's the person who hired them. Yes, Kate?
So you and I were talking a little bit about the no managers and why you think that works in certain companies versus others, and I think other people might enjoy that line of thinking.
Yeah, Kate and I were talking about Scott's GitHub assertion about no managers. And I don't know. I'm intrigued by you guys. I've learned to live in two bodies, right? Ever since I took the vow of geekdom, right? So since the vow of geekdom, sometimes the HR person in me comes out and goes, "That can't be done. That'll just never work. It'll be total chaos, and things will go really slow." And then the innovator in me goes, "Well, how's it working?" I want to really talk to people and see if it's really working out for them or not at scale. It's not just the vow of geekdom that I took. I was jealous. It's like, here I was in this company where we invented something nobody else had ever attempted to do in the whole world, right? And everybody was innovative, and I got to be the HR girl? Like, ugh. Who's changed performance improvement plans in the last 4 decades? Jeez, for God's sake. So, one of the ways I learned to innovate in my world that you're welcome to try is I just stopped doing shit. It's like, what if we just stop having them, see if the world, as we know it, comes to an end, right? What if we stop tracking vacation? You know how much vacation people at Netflix take? Same as they always have. If they got small kids in nursery school and you can leave in the middle of the day, you do. If you got small kids in elementary school, you take off all school holidays and 2 weeks in this. I mean, if you're single, you go hike in Turkey for a month, right? I mean, you do what you always did. It's up to you now. It's just a different contract with people. So the thing about not managers is I think that it's been my experience that it is efficient and effective to know who owns a final decision, because that's what makes things go quickly. Humans organize for efficiency, right? You know, the cavemen taking down the dinosaur, right? It's going to take more than one guy, right? Somebody's got to get the spear or whatever, right? So it's an organized activity. So humans, the reason why humans organize, I actually told this to PJ. I said, look, you can have any kind of structure you want, but structure will occur. And that the difference between happy little innovative startup and soulless corporation is not, it's not 2 days. So there's choices that you make. And the reason why I wanted to teach you the lesson that I did today was I wanted to give you a lesson that you can use even if you're in a soulless corporation, right? You can create your own teams the way you want to create them. Anything else? Well, thank you very much for having me.